Good morning, SimWorld. Welcome back in. It is March 28th. We've got a full slate of action, a lot of SWBA activities, some signings continue to trickle in. I think I've used that 2 times in a row, and of course, some highlights from SW Prep last night. I'm Marsh, joined this fine Thursday morning by the fine-looking Rick Blaze. Rick, how we doing?
Pretty good, Morris. Hey, I love the fact that you're always down and committed to do the show, in spite of the fact that you are locked in jail right now. I don't know how you got the opportunity to get and do a live broadcast while being locked down, but man, I love it, man. I appreciate your commitment, brother. Let's get to it.
It's got, connections, and they don't pay off all the time, clearly. Of course, we're not in jail, just for clarification, but here we are, nonetheless, looking like it. I concede that point. That's what you do when you're on the road. So let's jump in. SWBA, big night last night for the Timberwolves. They pick up their 50th win of the season. It's just the fifth time in their organization's history that they've won 50 games, and it's kind of been the conversation and the question around this team from the beginning. Are they actually a contender? They're continuing to do this right now, Rick, without Karl Anthony Towns. But they've been a team that has been dynamic thanks to Anthony Edwards. Is he going to be enough to make them a good contender and a legitimate contender come June?
I think they're going to be exciting to watch. I think they're going to make some noise. Are they going to be a serious contender right this year? I don't think so. You know, the playoffs is a total different beast. It's totally different from the regular season, and a young team like the Timberwolves don't have a lot of experience, or a lot of players with that much experience with success in the playoffs. So usually playoffs are for teams who have been there before, who have players who's been there before, who has a lot of experience in playoff basketball. I think they're gonna be exciting. I think they're gonna be fun. I think they can win a round. I don't know of two. I think they can win a round. I'm just more excited about it now becoming Anthony Edwards' team. He's the alpha of the team now. We see that they're winning in spite of not having called Anthony Towns. I think you can see a shakeup in the Timberwolves or makeup uh, by maybe this offseason, and maybe Towns gets shipped out for some more pieces and help for Anthony Edwards, who is going to be the de facto uno, the number one guy, possibly in the NBA in the next few years.
Yeah, you're spot on about the fact that you need a little bit of track record, right? And even we're going to talk negatively about the Warriors, but again, everything two degrees of separation to the Warriors when this guy's talking. But they needed the good playoff run, the good playoff series against the Nuggets to then propel themselves up. The Timberwolves had that a little bit last season with the most competitive 5 game series in NBA history, in which they lost in the opening round to the eventual champions. What this team reminds me of is 2 seasons ago's Memphis Grizzlies, who went in, they lost as the 8 seed. They beat the Warriors in the play-in game on the road. They lost in the play-in, and then the following season they make the run where they end up falling to the Golden State Warriors, but they have a great 2 seed, really great season, and that was the what should have been the trajectory up until obviously the drama of the last 2 years. But they've got a guy on this roster already, right there, Naz Reid, who's I think underrated is probably unfair at this point because people are coming around to understanding the type of game he brings. He's almost Karl Anthony Towns light, which I think almost better fits this group because it's a clear delineation that says Anthony Edwards is our number one guy. And I think early in the season, there was still the internal confusion, let's call it, that Karl Anthony Towns still wanted to be that guy. He was the first one there. He was the one that survived the departures of Zach LaVine and Andrew Wiggins, of what should have been their future core. The torch is passed because Anthony Edwards is Anthony Edwards at this point, and Naz Reid almost slides into that four, the stretch big player that fits really well next to Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, and I don't think the torch was passed. The torch was taken. It was spun, dude.
Valid.
Uh, it was grabbed by the horn, so to speak, by Anthony Edwards, whose talent has just been shining. I think if you're the Timberwolves, you now build this team. I know this is going to sound how it's going to sound, but I'm going to say it. You now have to build this team. It'll be your best advantage to build this team like the Michael Jordan of Bulls. You got your de facto number one guy, and then you got key pieces that play key contributions and key positions around him. You don't need. Uh, uh, you can have a Scottie Pippen like. I don't think Carl Anthony Towns is in line for personally want to be a Scottie
No.
Pippen to Anthony Edwards' Jordan. So therein lies the rub. So you got a Nas Reed who don't need as many touches as a Carl Anthony Towns to do a similar type of skill set. So now you go get your Scottie Pippen. You go get the number two guy who can do some things with Anthony Edwards, and you have a team that's that can really compete, and you have a player that's really really good, and the sky can be the limit. What a day we live in, where the Minnesota Timberwolves can be a relevant basketball program for a stretch of seasons. Not since KG and Marbury have we had some excitement down in Minnesota.
Which is all well deserved for that fan base and that organization. And hey, congrats to Alex Rodriguez. He gets to be an owner, and immediately his team is relevant. So good for him. Relevant indeed remaining are the Golden State Warriors. They win a thriller last night, but the storyline, despite Steph nailing a three late in that one, is not even that. It's Draymond Green being Draymond Green, ejected 4 minutes into that basketball game for John with a ref. The viralness of this all was the visceral reaction that you could see from Steph Curry afterwards. You know, some people are calling it red eyes. I'm colorblind, so I can't even say that. But there was certainly frustration, and this has been a group that's backed Draymond Green since the beginning, and even through the suspension. Rick, I don't know that the sky is falling and he's going to be out the door, partially because he's still a good basketball player and they need to win, but also because that contract's not movable with 3 years, $75 million left on it for a guy in his
Hmm.
mid 30s. So let's press the brakes on this being the end of the Draymond Green era. But I'm curious your thoughts quickly before we move on where this team goes from
Uh,
here.
I think it's one thing for the audience to be to go run thin on your antics. I think it's another thing when your teammates are running thin on your antics. I think we're at a space now where his teammates are running thin. If you're Draymond, you need to kind of tighten up because now it becomes a problem when your teammate says it's a problem.
Let's switch to the football field where SWFL signing Jadeveon Clowney, 2 year, $20 million deal to head to the Carolina Panthers. Panthers are trying to get relevant in the NFC South right now. They are struggling a season ago, obviously. They have no draft picks coming up in the SWFL draft in April. Is this actually a move that moves the needle, or is this more of a nostalgia signing where they've got a little bit of cap space? They can bring in somebody that's well known in the region and they could say, we
Yeah.
might only win 4 games, but at least you know who this guy is.
I don't know if it moves the needle. Jadeveon Clowney for the last since he got drafted by us, he's been a hired assassin from team to team to team. He plays very good at times. He plays okay at other times, but the problem is not just Jadeveon Clowney. Now it's gonna look. He does have a lot of help, so he should go off because he has Brian Burns on the other side. But the problem is they got a 5'5" guy playing quarterback. That's the issue. A 5'5" guy who's 125 pounds soaking wet with Timberland boots on. That's the issue. You have to keep him upright, and to keep him upright in the National Football League is a very tough task. They've signed some offensive guys to try to get them going, but the offense is what needs most. But it doesn't help getting. It doesn't hurt having a Jadeveon Clowney on your team. I think he's going to play fine in Carolina. I think with the way the defensive scheme is set up, it's going to allow him to get some good numbers, and maybe it nudges the needle, but I don't know if it moves it. Offensively, is a way to move the needle if you're the Carolina Panthers.
I think it moves the needle in the fact that the NFC South is just not a good division, right? We're looking at the Atlanta Falcons who go out and get Kirk Cousins, and that's suddenly a move to save a franchise. Now, look, Atlanta was good last season. They won 9 games with
Uh-huh.
quarterback play that was well below
Subpar.
the league
Yeah.
average. Um, but the rest of that division, New Orleans, are we running back the Derek Carr experience again, or are we doing this another 12 or
They don't have
17
they
games?
don't have a choice.
I would like to not, but you're right. They don't have a choice now that Jameis is up in Cleveland, and that probably wasn't a good alternative option anyway. If you're the Panthers, at least you get something of relevance to kind of push for. So hey, if we can get a guy that makes us 8 wins, does that win the division? 9 wins? If we can get to that, you're right. They need to protect Bryce Young. That needs to be the first point of progression and not, maintenance or regression. He was dealt maybe the worst hand in all of the SWFL last season with the combination of the roster, with the offensive line, with the ownership group, with the coaching staff. None of that situation was ideal. So to add somebody, not granted on the opposite side of the football, but somebody who's been around the league, this is the step of the rebuild. I don't think the Panthers are suddenly winning the NFC South, but at the very least, can they become relevant and show signs of maturation? And like you said, protect around Bryce Young. Find some way to say, hey, look, we do think this is the guy because we passed on CJ Stroud and he just cooked in Houston, as you're well aware. We need to make sure that we didn't completely miss on this and then give up the pick that gave Caleb Williams to the Chicago Bears. So
Absolutely.
not ideal, but
Yeah.
it's a movement.
Yeah, if you're the Panthers, you are trying so hard to save face on your pick, because it is looking like a dumpster fire from all the choices that you made from the pick all the way down to the coaching staff. So they're desperately trying to save face and try to save this fan base, because you're right. Everything you said about the CJ, the Caleb Williams losing the pick is they desperate for sure.
Let's move to SimWorld Prep, where Japhet Towns 28 points in the fourth quarter and overtime combined, all 12 of the Reigning Trays points last night, as the Reigning Trays get a win over a frisky Beyond the Arch team that's hasn't quite been good, but they've been enough to put the fear of losing a game into some teams. You were there.
Yeah.
What was it like watching Towns do Towns things?
Let me tell you, man, it was a really good game, and you're not gonna know about the scoreboard, but BTA had this game won a long time ago. But BTA gave a master class on how to lose a game. They gave a master class on how to lose the game one-on-one. The times they were supposed to hold the ball and slow the game down, they start rushing shots. The times that they were supposed to get good shots, they turn the ball over. They were 3 seconds in the lane. It was going to the wrong guys at the wrong time. It was a masterful. It was uncanny how terrible they were with making choices and decisions, especially in a clutch game in the fourth quarter. And as it comes down to it, you woke and let's for 3 quarters, Japhet Towns was a regular pedestrian player. He only scored 2 points in the third. He had like 11 or 10 at the half. So he had 13 points going into the fourth quarter. He was at one point he was 5 for 15. He was very pedestrian. It was a very winnable game for BTA. They hung around. They let the Trays hang around, and then Japhet Towns became Japhet Towns, and here you go, winning in overtime. It was an exciting game, but it was a letdown game for BTA nevertheless.
Yeah, 39 points, finished 17 of 36, 28 in those final two, so I had just 11 there through the first 3 quarters. Look, to stay on the positive side for the Trays, this is just we have been blessed might be an exaggeration, but we have been fortunate enough to see Japhet Towns and the maturation and the progression that he's had. You want to talk about maturation from Carolina. He has made huge steps forward in his basketball game to the point that he's going to Missouri. I'm hoping that the Tigers get some type of other pieces around him, because it's a discredit to his talents that he's playing. Again, Trays have a perfectly fine roster, but there's better pieces out there that could be a number 2 next to Japhet Towns that he has not been able to play with. And this is the prep level. It's about progression. It's about development. SimWorld U starts to balance wins and losses a little bit heavier, but he needs a viable number 2, like we're talking about with Anthony Edwards. And if he gets that, the sky is the limit for what he could do as an impact player, both at the SWU level, but beyond that to SWBA. I'm excited for his prospects, because it's been a real pleasure watching these type of exploits where it's just one moment you're thinking he's off, and then suddenly the avalanche is unleashed upon the rest of the league and the rest of his opponents. Only 2 games as we jump into our quick wrap-up. We'll start with Gotham 5 and Lone Star, a 91-86. We got fortunate enough with 2 thrillers last night. Gotham 5, 91-86 over Lone Star 21 from Majere Williams, 14, 9, and 6, plus 6 blocks from Mugen Williams in the victory.
Yeah, and of course on the other side of things, the game we talked about, We as we wrap up the Gotham game. Uh, Good game, both teams. Uh, this Lone Star team, we've seen a lot of them as of recent, right? What do you they've been kind of they've been on a heater. Let's call it what it is. They've been on a heater. They playing more team ball. The team that's been showing up is what we expected once they started getting these types of players that came into the team. So I'm glad to see both these games and both these teams playing well.
Man, I hate to say I said it, but man, right after all those signings came in, I did say, "Hey, watch out for Lone Star." And here we are.
It's
And you
taking
know
a
what?
while. It's taking a long time to get here, though.
You know what? But we got here. That's what counts.
We
And
got
real
here.
quick, I know our producer's gonna hate it, but how about this real quick? Ronnie Shanahan, 18-7-8 on the same day he was in Nevada for a school tour. So props to
Getting it
that
done.
young man. Not only can he care about looking for the future, he's also caring about the present day, despite losing.
Or maybe
All
he's
right,
ready to sign.
or maybe that was his. He's saying, "Hey, Wolfpack, come get
Oh,
me, come get me." All right,
oh.
2 games back on SimWorld TV. That's Gulf Coast and Originators, starting at 7 p.m. 8 p.m. is ATLians and Run DMV. Larger schedule, some local broadcast games. Bad Boys South America, Best Coast Latin America, Rocky Mountain, and back is Japhet Towns and Raining Trays. For Rick, thank you for tuning in, for joining us. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you're staying locked here on SimWorld TV, the only place where you can see the game, be the game.